All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Herding Squirrels, a podcast about modern teams. Joining us today is Dave Walters. Welcome, Dave.
Brandon, thank you. Fun to be here.
So, for our listeners, Dave is the former CTO of Hired, Lacalle Group, and Firefighter Wellness after spending 13 years at the Knot Worldwide, part of the XO Group. He brings a
All
strong
good.
track record in scaling platforms responsibly, operational rigor that supports both growth and margin, and de-risking complex technical initiatives. Beyond the boardroom, he's also been a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter, for over 20 years and thrives in high stakes environments. Whether it's coordinating rope rescue teams, heading into burning structures, or setting the technical strategy to bring the business vision to life, he brings calm leadership where it counts most. Dave, so happy to
Awesome.
have you here.
Awesome.
For our first build, what I want you to do is build a model that tells a story about who you are outside of work. Dave, I want to see your model. Show us what you
All
built.
right, here we go. So, a little abstract here. Let's see if we can get it in. All right. I got to figure out the camera angles a little bit. So, I'm going to try to not drop any pieces. I kind of made it in the shape of a diamond or square, but intention is to be a diamond. Oh, I'm already breaking it here. This flower is a little bit fragile, so you know what? I'm gonna take that long stem off just because I don't want to keep breaking it. Shape of a diamond. I got, the first 20 something years of my life, baseball was a big part of it. Played baseball, played through college, formed a lot of foundation for who I am. So that's kind of why the diamond is on the bottom there. That's me, obviously. Over at what would be first base here is my family. Flower for my family. That seemed to be the best way to represent them in this. So, and they're first base, right? That's got to come first. Family comes first. At second base here is a whole bunch of orange and reds for fire, for the fire department. Kind of like now I've moved past playing baseball. That kind of took over for me as the next stage of my life, in addition to work and being a CTO. So yeah, that's there. And then third base here is basically an abstract tree representing outdoors. Just like you said, I'm a big outdoors guy. Anything I can do to just get outside, whether it's working on my yard or the gardens. I even enjoy pulling weeds just because it gets me outside, gets my hands dirty a little bit. So, whether it's hiking, going to the beach, kayaking on the water here on Long Island. So, yeah, that's it.
That's fantastic. I love it. So, one, I love the baseball analogy. The whole first base, second base, that's just fantastic. It
Yeah.
just gives such a nice arc to the whole story. And two, I have to ask, what position did you play in baseball?
So, I forgot to mention this. I was actually a catcher, which is why I'm also at home plate. So,
Oh,
I think a lot of synergies and analogies for metaphors for how I've kind of led my life, and what kind of leader I am in my professional life as well.
Dave, that's fantastic. I see. I think this might be part of the synergy. I stopped playing in high school, but I was also a catcher, so I know
Awesome,
the world
awesome.
enough and right squatting behind the plate. And I think back when we were playing, they didn't do the whole sitting down half the time. Like you squat the whole
Yeah,
game. Like that's just how you went. And we now have probably both have horrible knees because of it. Uh,
exactly.
this is fantastic. So we're just gonna jump into our next build, which is I want you to think about what is the best team experience you've ever been a part of, and maybe it's from your CTO life, maybe it's from your baseball life. Again, whatever is fitting for you. And I'd like you to build a model that explains why that experience was so amazing.
Yeah.
Dave, let's see your best team experience model.
All right. So here we go. So, all right, I'm a bit abstract as well, so I'm gonna have to explain this one. So each of the different lines of colors represent different teams, different groups within the overarching organization. So I've got what do I got? Six here, kind of including these two beige colored ones. Um, if you notice, each of the teams starting at a different point. Um, they're all working on, the beige ones are working on more foundational things. They're kind of down a little bit lower. The green, the red, blue, and pink, each one's kind of getting involved a little bit at different stages. but they're all contributing towards that common goal, the flag there at the end. A little bit of a bridge there in the yellow. That's just kind of bridging all of that work together, all those teams together at the end. They're coming together towards that common goal. Ultimately, and I've had this a number of times in my career where everything just comes together nicely. You have very clear goals, very clear North Stars for the business, for the organization. Everybody buys into it. Everybody does their part. Everybody supports each other, holds each other up, and you achieve that end goal. Good analogy for sports as well, right? Like if you're team sports, especially baseball, right? It's great when everybody just gels, pick each other up. One person fails, but the next one's there to kind of knock the guy in, get the run in, and drive home a win.
I love that. I really like the visual of, right, the different colors and then just the different positioning, right? Everyone's starting in different places, yet all marching towards that same goal. And that was a really powerful visual that you put together there. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Sometimes that's a challenge with teams, right? Because you especially big, significant projects, you can't necessarily have everybody engaged at the very beginning at the same time, right? Because there's not enough defined. And that becomes a challenge for some of the teams. It's like, all right, well, yeah, we're bought into this goal. We're not working on it yet. Like, why not? Like, we want to be part of it. We want to go. And they got to trust that, all right, yeah, their time's coming. You got to be doing something else right now, but shortly you're going to be fully engaged on this as well.
I love it. It's almost like a little bit of FOMO, right? It's the big, I want to work on that big goal too. This sounds fantastic. I want to be on there. Like, hold on, we're going to get there eventually.
Exactly.
A little patience, a little pause.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Fantastic. Dave, great visual. We're going to dive into this in a little bit too. I want to jump into our next build. So if you can start dismantling that beautiful piece of art that you created. And while you're dismantling that, I want you to think about the opposite now, right? Think about what is the worst team experience you've ever been a part of, and think about why was that team experience so challenging.
If you can recall my last one, where fantastic team, everybody's working together, lots of synergies, common goal, common vision. Here's sort of the opposite of that, right? So 4 teams there, the 2 beige teams, pink and blue, each kind of going in different directions. The blue one headed towards the goal. They're the flag's the goal there. They're going in the right direction. They're working hard. Maybe they're executing. Pink one was going in the right direction, but they kind of gave up. They didn't fully commit to the goal. So you see, they never really got there. The other 2 teams were not really going in the right direction, a bit misguided. So that's the nightmare scenario, right? You're never going to get where you need to be. Maybe you get lucky, right? But you're relying on luck there to execute.
Now, is there a specific team that you worked with that had that scenario? Like, how did that kind of come up in your mind?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of times in my career where teams were on that path. Thankfully, all course corrected, and we had the opportunity to jump in there and make the corrections that were needed to get everybody in line. And when I say in line, right, it's not like whipping people into a certain direction, right? It's not an authoritative. It's they used to use the term that come to Jesus. All right, let's all sit down. What's going on here? Like, why are we not working towards that common goal? What are you missing? What do you need from us? What context don't you have? Why are you not bought into this idea? Let's figure out how we get things on the right track.
And I think it's a perfect phrase to use that, right? Get in line is, like you said, it's not authoritarian, especially if we look back to the model you just shared, because people were not in line, right? They're like, no, I'm going off to the side, right? I always love the analogy of bumper bowling. The bumpers come out to make
Yeah.
sure that you don't get gutter balls, because yeah, no one wants gutter balls, and sometimes you need some
Yeah.
bumpers. But what? So what were some of the reasons? Like, why were people not in line? Why were they adjacent? Why were they short? Why were they not coming up?
So first off, not being fully bought into the vision, right?
Hmm.
Or even before that, understanding what the master vision is. Maybe they in some cases they had an idea of what they were expected to do, but they didn't understand how that fit into the big picture. So when they went about their day job, um, when decisions needed to be made by them that required broader context, they didn't have that broader context. So they were making decisions with limited views, and sometimes that was driving them in the wrong direction inadvertently. Right? It wasn't intentional. They thought they were doing the best. They thought they were doing the right thing. Right? We withheld some context from them unintentionally. Um, other times not bought in, right? They understand where we want to go, but they're not fully bought in. They haven't heard enough about the why. Why are we doing this? And so in their minds, they're wasting effort. It's not going to be successful. And if you have an engineer that feels like they're wasting effort, they're not going to be executing and giving it 100%, right? Like engineers are very proud of the work they do, right? Of what they put into that. But no engineer wants to feel like it's wasted effort. Um, so I think those are some of the big things, right? Then sometimes you get into team dynamics, right, of individuals that just don't seem to gel nicely. They're coming from two different backgrounds, past experiences, the way they view things, right? And sometimes you got to look at, all right, do we mix things up a little bit so that you have the right dynamics? Maybe shift some people around so they're not working as closely together as often, and they don't have to worry about those stresses.
Absolutely, that makes a ton of sense. And I think I mean that leads into, I think, my next question, which you've been leading technical teams for a while. How do you think leading technical teams is different than leading, maybe, say, non-technical teams? Like what is some challenges maybe that you have to deal with that some other folks maybe don't have to?
Yeah, I think that in most ways it is very similar, right?
Yeah.
Leadership is still leadership, whether it's on a baseball diamond or on a fire ground or in a firehouse or on a technology team, right? Um, the and this is not exclusive to technical teams, but technical teams definitely are on the side of the spectrum of individuals that um, can start off very skeptical until they are convinced that they're on the right path, right? And that leadership and management and the company as a whole is doing the right thing and on the right path. They're going to question, good questions. They're going to have good questions, but they're going to question, right? Like, why are we doing this? Are we doing the right thing? Not only is it going to be successful from a product perspective, um, is it good for humanity, right? Is this something we should be doing, or is this potentially going to have a negative impact? We see that with AI recently, right? There certainly has been a lot of questioning early on about, are we doing the right thing with AI? What are going to be the positive versus the negative impacts on society?
It's interesting, and it's one of the things that I've been hearing from other guests and just discussion on teams too, is there's a level of, I'd almost say, varietal domain expertise, and I would imagine, and let me know if I'm
Yeah,
leading too much here, but especially with engineers, there's a level of domain expertise on what's happening right at the ground level, putting the pieces together, knowing the structure, whereas leadership maybe seems a little bit away from that, right? They don't necessarily, they're sort of speaking almost different languages.
yeah.
Is there a level of truth to that? Is that something that you've seen in your leadership journey?
Yeah, I think that's very true. Certain organizations more so than others,
Hmm.
right? You have the companies out there that are very technical companies, right? And everybody from the founder on down is very technical, and they kind of speak the same language inherently. But you do have other organizations where the founders, the CEO, the whatever, the leaders don't come from that same kind of technical background, and in those cases, it's the role of me or somebody like me or my leader and my leadership team to bridge that gap, right? To make sure that as we're translating and taking feedback and updates from the technical side to the rest of the company, we're translating that appropriately, and vice versa.
And I've been excited to kind of dip into this question, but I really want to know how your volunteer firefighting and your baseball experience have influenced how you lead, how you develop teams. Yeah, I'm sure, right, in many different ways, but I'd love to hear from you, like how that influence has come about in your
Yeah,
career.
I think first and foremost, I think of everything as a team, right? I think in the business world, all too often we operate like a set of individuals. Like I have my job, this is my job. I'm going to stay in my lane. Everybody else stays in their lane. You know, if as long as I do my job end to end as I was expected to do it, what the end result is not necessarily my concern, right? Because that means leadership or management or some other individual didn't execute on their job. Um, High performing teams, good teams. You see this a lot in startups. Yes, everybody has their role, their job. You have to know when to stay in your lane, but you also have to know when to pick things up that are maybe a little bit outside of your lane because it's necessary for success. You gotta prop up the team as a whole. At the end of the day, an individual success is meaningless if the company as a whole is failing. Right? It's meaningful to that individual for sure, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to generate a successful company. So, I'm always looking at things as a team. What do we need to do to make the entire org successful and the entire company successful? As well as how do I make individuals on my team successful? How do I support them in the direction that they want to go? It's not a one or the other. You got to do both, but you got to make sure that the organization as a whole is successful because otherwise you don't have an opportunity to support the individual within the team. I'd say that the second biggest way it's probably influenced me is just staying calm under pressure, right? I think something to that with all athletes that go into the business world, right? They have a different perspective on pressure, right? And how to stay calm through that and work through that. I get a little bit more of that on the fire department side, right? You deal with some pretty crazy scenarios there that literally are life and death, right? And gives an appreciation for when you're having a rough day or facing a tough scenario in the business world. When, okay, you know what? This is not life and death. It's important. It's important. I need to solve this. We need to solve this as an organization, but it's not life and death.
I think that's such a great frame to have and to pull back on, like you said, that calm under pressure, right? A little bit of patience, and I know I've heard that echoed in many of my roles in the past. Where you're
Yeah.
like, okay, let's take a look at what we're really doing here. Let's take a breath. Let's
Yep.
calm, right? Because we get excited, and people are passionate about the work and doing a good job. But yeah, knowing right, like this isn't life or death. There are,
Yeah.
and when it is, yes, it's even more important probably to be a little bit patient and calm and make sure you're doing the
Absolutely.
right things. Oh my gosh, how I think a lot has happened in the past, right, 5 years since the pandemic with the virtual work and tools and communication. Like, a lot of things have changed. How do you believe a lot of these changes have impacted teams and teamwork?
obvious, right, is with the pandemic and remote work, it fast tracked something that was already a trend, right? Meaning individuals working remotely more often. Something that engineers were pushing for a long time, right? And that pandemic, in the matter of 1 week, fast tracked that, right? And over the course of 1 year, kind of ingrained it as a natural way to work. Um, there's some shifting, right? The pendulum maybe shifted a little bit too far, too fast, and understandably, there's some shifting back with return to work focus. Some organizations, that's right, right? Some organizations, it's right to be in office. It's right, important to be face to face. Not all. Big companies gotta understand what's right for them and why. Um, that's the obvious. With AI now, um, I think it's a major shift for how software engineers do their jobs, right? For how technical people do their jobs. We've had other major shifts, right? We've had the cloud, right? Was in my mind, another significant shift in how we build technology and how we utilize technology. This, I think, is a little bit more substantial, but I think it's a good reminder to us that we constantly have to be evolving. Technology is evolving, the world's evolving, and this has always been the case in life. If you dig in your heels and you refuse to change, you're going to get left behind, right? Maybe not immediately, but eventually. You have to embrace that change. You gotta learn, continue learning, continue evolving, and figure out how that new technology, those new paradigms, are actually going to help you and make you a better person, better engineer, better whatever.
We're in amazing times. It's again, I feel like we could have this conversation a year from now, and we're gonna have all sorts of fun, different answers on what's even happened in that period of time.
Absolutely, absolutely,
awesome. Dave, you got time for one more build?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do one last build here, and so for this build, I want you to imagine, all right, you're giving advice to an up and coming group of technical leaders, their first leadership role. Build a model to give them some advice on how to be a great leader. Dave, I'm excited to see your leadership advice model.
All right, so here we go. I'm kind of visualize the path of leadership of growth, right? So you got times you're going to start making some steps up in your career path. You're gonna have some growth. Sometimes you're going to have just short steps. You might be in a role in a position for a year or two, and you're ready for the next big step up. Sometimes you're going to have some plateaus for a while before you have your next opportunity for elevation. You see each of these steps comes sometimes a little bit sooner than some of the others. You got to keep kind of pushing forward, though, right? Keep looking for what's next. What's your next opportunity for growth? Underneath, you can see there's some supports along the way. It's important as you kind of go through your career, as you get elevated, constantly looking for those mentors, those team members and friends that can support you along the way, that can give you the advice you need, that have been there, done that. And you can see as you kind of go up, the support you need, right? As you kind of elevate up, you need different supports, right? That mentor that maybe got you from, a senior engineer to an engineering lead may not be the same mentor you're going to need when you're going from a VP of engineering to a CTO. So constantly be looking for that, learning, growing, finding the right mentors and support and groups, and don't do it alone.
I love it. Fantastic, Dave. Great model. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have to ask, how did it feel building your thoughts and ideas out of Lego bricks?
It was awesome. a little intimidating at first, but I will say, your advice earlier was the best. Just start working. Once you start putting some things together, creative juices seem to flow. And what I ended with was not what I thought I was going to have at the beginning, but it made sense.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Dave, that's our time. Thank you so much for playing with us today. Appreciate having you. Where can we find you? Where can our listeners find more of Dave online?
I keep a fairly low profile on social media, but I have my LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to track me down.
Awesome. Well, we'll include that link in our show notes. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, Dave, and thank you everyone for listening. This is Herding Squirrels, your modern podcast about teams. Bye now.